What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the E4 Explicit podcast. I'm Corey, and today you're going to watch me interview the armchair detective from Tiger King, Ripper. He is the guy in season 2 that is basically trying to figure out what happened to Don Lewis, along with the daughters of Don Lewis, the ex-husband of your girl, Carol Baskins. So I interview him about his experience on the show of Tiger King season 2. We talk about Tiger King season 1. We talk about Joe Exotic, Carol Baskin, John Phillips, the lawyer who is now representing Joe Exotic. He also tells me 2 brand new things that he has not put out yet to any media source at all about the Don Lewis and Carol Baskin case. So this is a long one, so buckle up tight. Anything Tiger King related is crazy anyways, and this does not disappoint. So stay tuned and watch the whole thing. Trust me. Also, be sure to like this video, hit that bell notification so you get notified every time I come on your screen, and also subscribe. Help me out with my subscriptions. I'm trying to get a little bit more people subscribed so I can get more of these interviews out to more people. But yeah, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that bell notification. And enjoy this episode of the E4 Exclusive Podcast with the armchair detective from Tiger King, Ripper. Peace out. This episode of the E4 Exclusive Podcast is brought to you by Bravo Concealment. Bravo Concealment is known for some of the best high quality and concealable holsters on the market. Located in the great state of Texas, they offer free shipping and unlimited lifetime warranty on all of their products, and a 30-day money-back guarantee if you don't like the product. I've been using Bravo Concealment for my gun holsters ever since I got into guns, and the quality is by far, bar none, the top notch in the entire industry that I've seen. And right now they're doing a buy one, get one free, plus free shipping, the 30-day money-back guarantee, and a lifetime warranty. On top of that, you, my friends, will get 10% off of any product, of any purchase on their website by using Explicit 10. Use the code Explicit 10 and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase from bravoconcealment.com. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the E4 Explicit Podcast. I'm Corey, and today we have Ripper Jack from the quote-unquote air quotes armchair detective from Tiger King season 2. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I appreciate it, Jack. If you can give everybody kind of a synopsis of who you are and kind of what you do, that would be great.
Hey, you put me on the spot there. What I do is kind of depends on who you ask. Some people will say I don't do anything, and then some will say I've done more than anyone has ever done on this case. But yeah, that's really a good question, Corey. I guess I'll just say I'm a content creator on YouTube. I have a YouTube channel under Ripper Jack Media. I'll just plug that real quick. I am the spokesperson for the family of Don Lewis. And if you don't know who Don Lewis is, he's the missing ex-husband of Carol Baskin, who was featured in episode 3 of Tiger King 1. And it's kind of, I guess I've been trying to help the family find out what happened to their dad. I mean, I do other things, but as far as this thing, like what surrounds this show, is I just wanted to help this family find out what happened to their dad. So I go around interviewing people, calling people that knew Don Lewis or people that I thought would have information about Don Lewis. And little did I know, within 2 weeks of diving into this, that we would have uncovered things that got the attention of one of the producers of the show. And then from there, it went kind of crazy.
Right. Yeah. So if anybody is living under a rock the last year and a half to 2 years, what he's referring to, Tiger King with Joe Exotic and all that stuff. Carol Baskin, I mean, so famous. I mean, it couldn't have come out on at a better time with COVID and everything. Pretty much everyone had no choice but to watch it. And it blew up. I mean, worldwide sensation, for good things and bad things, I think personally. Good things that shed a lot of light on like what we're going to talk about, Carol Baskin, Don Lewis, but also like the that trade of like tigers and big cats and stuff like that. I think that also gets a lot of it gets kind of pushed to the side a lot because there's so many storylines in Tiger King. It's fucking crazy, man. Like everything, every character is a character in this show and in this kind of whole thing in the documentary series. But anyway, first of all, how did you get into this kind of line of work as far as, a quote unquote armchair detective or investigator? Not so much just the Tiger King stuff, but in general, how did you get into it?
That's a great question, and not one that many people will ask. But and let me just say first on the Tiger King thing, I was late to the party. Like I didn't watch it when it first came out. Like, and I'll explain more about that in a little bit because it's kind of important that I didn't see it when it first came out. But I have been through the legal system myself on the wrong side of it, so to speak. And I won't go into details, but like I went through a 4.5 year divorce I had 2 kids that were like 3 and 4 years old. A divorce should not last 4.5 years,
right?
In a custody battle. But there were so many tricks played on me during my divorce that I was put through the ringer. And if I would have had someone to help me during that time, I would have really appreciated someone that had experience of digging into different, investigating things and then knowing how the court system actually worked. But
Right.
Me going through that, and then I finally had my day in court where I'll just tell you up in Kansas, if you're a male, it's hard to get custody of your kids, to get 50% custody, 50% parenting time. But at the end of my 4.5 year ordeal, I did get 50% custody, 50% parenting time, but it was a mess and it was so much work. And after I did that, so many people would tell me, when I would tell them all the things that happened to me and the things I had to go through, a lot of people said, oh, you should start a website or do something so that you can help other guys or girls, whoever's going through this, and you get these tricks. Because the way the justice system works, somebody can just say whatever they want about somebody, and next thing you know, you could be in jail and you have to prove that you're innocent. It's not innocent till proven guilty. It's guilty until you can prove that you're innocent. And sometimes people can't do it. I was lucky enough that I was paying for both cell phones, and I was able to pull up all the call records and use that in court so that I could prove that someone had lied. But that's one reason. And then there's a couple other people that I know that went through the justice system who really got screwed over. And I just thought, 10 years later, I just thought, man, I could really help somebody if they go through something and they've been wronged by the justice system. And when I saw this show, Tiger King, there's a lot of ways to be wronged by the justice system, but one way is not getting justice for a crime that had happened. And after I watched the show, I decided that this family was wronged by the justice system because there was not really an investigation into what happened to their dad. I'm talking about the three daughters, and of course his ex-wife, she still loves the man. She's still in love with him. I mean, when
Carol?
she talks about him, Gladys, his ex-wife, but when she talks about Don Lewis, this was Don's first wife, Gladys. Her eyes light up when she tells the stories of how they met and all the things that they did. Her eyes light up. She still loves the guy. And I just thought, they were wronged by the justice system, not like in a way where, like what I went through, but nobody helped them. And people should get helped when something like this happens. There should be, I mean, to me, it's an easy case. Or it would have been back then. I think within a week, they should have closed the case out, really. There's been so much information that we've uncovered. And if they would have done that back in 1997, I really think it would have been one of the easiest cases they ever worked.
Right. Yeah. Well, a lot of the people that I talk to on here, homicide detectives and other people that I just talked to Brandon Embry's mom, who her son, you look at these photos and of this crime scene of him, he looks like he got beat to death. And they labeled it as pneumonia. He died from pneumonia. It's one of those things where you're like, this should be an open shut type situation. That is something you could look into. It's fascinating. They were just on the ID channel. Total mystery, but there's like this other woman that's like who they think is involved. She's like a black widow. Everybody around her gets sick and die. It's crazy, but it's similar to that, to where it's like, if these cops just do what they're paid to do or what they should be doing, there might be other things that, get in the way of that, money, kind of politics, certain stuff that they don't want to, or they just don't care, some of them. But I don't know strictly what happened in 1997, but I mean, I talk to a lot of people that say the same thing you just said, is this could have had a completely different outcome if X, Y, and Z happened. So people like you, and it seemed like the cop on season 2 of Tiger King was kind of like on the fence. He was like, we have evidence, we have this, we have that. It's an open investigation, but also I kind of got that riff. Like it just didn't seem like not they don't care, but I don't know. I feel like you're putting a lot more effort into it than actual law enforcement. If that's, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, there's nothing to correct you on. We have uncovered, I mean, we, and I say we, I'm talking about me and my group, because there's a large group of people that have helped, because I don't want anyone to think that me, myself, Ripper, has uncovered all of this stuff. There is a large group of people that, in our Facebook group that have done so much work uncovering things. And what's nice for me is, they do all this work and they put all this stuff out there and I can see it all. And then sometimes I can see, like, oh, this thing here and this thing here, when you put those together, you have something that, like for example, let me think of, well, like for example, someone sent me a video a couple of weeks of Carol Baskin talking about a key ring that Don Lewis had. And it was a large key ring with a bunch of keys on it. And they sent me the video, and there were some other things in the video as well. But when I watched the video, and this is not anything that's out there, so you'll be the first to put this out there. This is not known. This is not public information. But when I was talking with Trish Farr, who is Kenny Farr's ex-wife, she was married to Kenny Farr, and Kenny Farr was the handyman for Don Lewis, and he had worked for Don for like 15 years. Even when Kenny was a teenager, he was doing work part-time for Don Lewis. So he knew Don for a long time. But in one of my conversations with his ex-wife, she told me that one day, Kenny came home and he had this giant key ring, and it had about 100 keys on it. Now, Kenny wasn't managing property. He didn't have a bunch of places that he had to go and, unlock doors and all those things. But she said he came home with this large key ring with like 100 keys on it. And of course, when I'm watching the video that this person sent me a couple of weeks ago, it hits me, I'm like, all right, this key ring that Carol is talking about that Don Lewis has ends up in the hands of Kenny Farr. I'm like, so the guy that went missing, his keys end up with the guy who received all of his guns, which the gun collection was a large gun collection that Kenny ended up with. And, those are the kind of things that you have multiple people working on things, and not everybody sees everything that's happening. But the nice thing for me is I can see all this stuff being put out in front of me, and then I can, try to piece these things together.
Right.
But another thing that she had told me in that same conversation, because I had asked her, what kind of things changed after Don Lewis went missing with Kenny? Like, what were things that stood out? And another thing that she had talked about, and this is something else that's not out there. She said he brought home a shoebox full of titles, like car titles and machinery titles. And she said he had a shoebox. She opened it up and looked at it, and there's just all these titles in there. And she's like, I don't know what he was doing with those, because he didn't go out and sell cars.
Right.
He didn't sell machinery. But nobody has brought that up. Like, I haven't seen another piece to the shoebox car title box thing, but like the keyring thing is, I think that's pretty important that Carol acknowledges that Don had a big keyring. And now, Kenny Farr's ex-wife has told me a story about Kenny having that. And she told me that story before Carol's video had come out. So she had information long before. And Trisha's given me a lot of information that in the beginning, I'm not going to kid, in the beginning, I was just like, there's just no way this stuff is true, that Kenny came home driving Don Lewis's van, told his wife Don's missing, nobody knows where he's at, and all of these things. And then as we started looking deeper and deeper into things, it turns out that the things that she said were pretty accurate.
Right.
I mean,
well, that's kind of what I was going to ask, is like, we already answered it, like the timeline of things. So Carol Baskin literally a couple of weeks ago put out a video about the keyring. You talked to Kenny's ex-wife like last year when this came up. So you kind of just start connecting the dots and the people that you're working with in your Facebook group.
Yeah. And I'm really lucky that I have like a really good memory for whatever reason. I can remember, I don't want to say a photographic memory, because I think that people that have a photographic memory are really, I don't know how it works exactly. And I think they're incredible people, the people that have a true photographic memory. But
Right.
when I see things, I can remember a lot of things and then piece them together. But yeah, this was, the video was sent to me a couple of weeks ago. I don't know when the video was published by Carol, but I know when I talked to Trish, I talked to her on April 1st. And then I think on April 2nd, and this is 2020, over a year ago, April 2nd is when I had her interview on my channel. And there was a lot of things I left out because I didn't do it live. I recorded it, but there were things that she said that I didn't think would want the public to know, or I didn't want Carol to know that we knew these things. And as I think back, like that keyring thing, I mean, as soon as I'm watching the video of Carol talking about it, I'm just like, wow. And not only that little piece, but later we learned that Carol ended up with Don Lewis's phone, his cell phone. And now this is one thing when you talk about law enforcement, it was me and my group of people that discovered Carol had ended up with this phone. I mean, we're the ones that relayed that information to the sheriff's department. And then it wasn't a few days later that their Sheriff Chronister, was making I don't know if he called a press conference or if he was on Nancy Grace or whatever it was, but he had done a show and he was talking about just within the last few days, his detectives had uncovered new evidence. And I was getting messages from people, like, how come he didn't say that we had uncovered that, or he got that information from you? And I was like, they can't.
Right.
They can't sit there and go, hey, by the way, we got some information from some armchair detectives, and but they claimed it as this was new evidence that they had just uncovered. But like the big key ring, that cell phone is a big deal. You have a guy that went missing, and his spouse, who he told numerous people he was going to divorce, ends up with his cell phone. And then the handyman, who also benefited from Don Lewis's disappearance, ends up with his keys and his guns.
Right.
And the gun collection, for those that don't know, in Tiger King 2, in episode 3, right around the 17-minute mark, they're interviewing Kenny Farr about the guns.
At the pool, in front of the pool.
At the pool.
Yep.
And they trip him up to where he doesn't remember all of a sudden how he got those guns. But the guns, it was 50 plus guns, according to his wife. And they had to have one of her kids actually help unload all the guns out of the van and put them in the house. And then there's other witnesses that had seen those guns. And so it's very believable when you hear from all these different people saying there were so many guns. There was a bathtub full of guns, a closet full of guns, and Don Lewis was a big collector of things. I mean, when Carol talks about him having a bunch of junk, I mean, you're talking, like acres worth of machinery and boats and just things that he would get for collateral. That's kind of another important thing. Those guns, Don would use those guns for collateral. He wasn't out just buying a bunch of guns. He was not like a big gun collector. But if someone needed a loan from Don Lewis, he'd loan him money, but he always wanted something for collateral. And some people would say, I have a boat, you can use my boat for collateral for, the $10,000 I need or whatever it is. But guns were one of the things that he would use for collateral from people. Wendell Williams, one of his business partners, was another example of collateral. Wendell had a piece of machinery that was probably worth $10,000 or something, but Don had loaned Wendell like $5,000. And Don took this piece of machinery and was holding it as collateral. And when Don wrote that restraining order, and Carol talks about the restraining order, and she's talking about hauling his junk off, one of the things she hauled off was this piece of machinery that he was holding as collateral with Wendell Williams. So you're talking $5,000 that she took and hauled off. She didn't know what any of that stuff was out there. She was just cleaning up the place. Yeah. But these guns, he would have never given his gun collection away. So when Kenny Farr says, Don traded me those guns for a job that I did for him, that's absolute bullshit.
Right.
Don Lewis would not have done that, especially when he was paying Kenny, like an hourly rate to work. He'd have no reason to trade this gun collection to Kenny. And then, of course, in the show, he says that, and then the producer, which sounded like Eric Good, says, so Carol didn't give you the guns? And Kenny really, you see him really thinking, his wheels are spinning.
Yeah.
And he's just...
I have a bunch of holsters from Bravo, and one of them is the inside the waistband holster. So this goes inside the waistband if you want to conceal carry. Also, swap it out here, outside the waistband. So this outside the waistband is actually like hella thin, and you can see kind of like how close to the body it can get. You could take this on the range. You can probably conceal this and comfortably do it with, a hoodie over top or whatever. If you want to open carry, it's up to you. They also send out mag pouches, right? So you can throw in an extra mag. You're going to the range. You don't have to unload and reload every single time. You got a little hollow point moment. They come in handy if you're on the range, like I said, or if you're concealed carry and you're one of those people that are got to have a lot of mags or whatever. Whatever your cup of tea is. They also send you these really cool pamphlets. They go into great details in these brochures of how to wear things properly, safety mechanisms, and all the features that all of these holsters have as well. So they really focus on educating their customers, which when it comes to guns, safety and education are number one. They don't have any left-handed holsters except for the Glock 19. I'm a lefty, but the right-handed holsters are so dope and they're so comfortable and concealable that I don't really give a shit. Just learn how to shoot with my right hand. And right now they're doing a buy one, get one free plus free shipping, the 30-day money-back guarantee, and a lifetime warranty. On top of that, you, my friends, will get 10% off of any product, of any purchase on their website by using Explicit 10. Use the code Explicit 10 and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase from bravoconcealment.com.
Thinking, and then Kenny says, yeah, it was Carol. And then the humdinger question comes when Eric says, so was Dawn already gone? And if you don't know the whole backstory to the gun stuff, you don't know how important of a question that is, because if he says, yes, Dawn was already gone, then we know Kenny knew that Dawn was missing Sunday night, because that's when he got the guns. But when Eric Good asked the question, so was Dawn already gone? Go back and watch this, because now you know the little backstory. When he asked that question, Kenny really, he like shits his pants.
Yeah, you can tell.
He knows, he's like, oh shit, I'm really like, there's no good answer at all with that one. And then he goes back to yeah, I got him from Dawn. Dawn gave him to me. He changes it back because he knows he can't use the Carol story. But after Tiger King came out, Carol put out her rebuttal. I know I'm going into a lot, but it's all important information.
Tiger King 2 or 1?
1. After Tiger King 1 came out on March 20th, on the 21st, Carol put a rebuttal out on her website, on her bigcatrescue.org site. And she was basically saying all the things that were not true in the show. And one of the things that she said in there, and she didn't even need to say it, but she said that she had loved Kenny Farr like a son, and she gave Kenny Dawn's gun collection because he had asked for it. Before that, there was no record of the guns at all. Like, it was all rumored that Kenny ended up with this gun collection, and we couldn't even find the guns from the sheriff's department, because the sheriff's department ended up getting those guns from Trish Farr, who was Kenny's ex-wife, in 2000. But when we're doing FOIA requests, they said they didn't have the guns. And then a reporter from the Tampa Bay Times actually found them by looking up some different cases, and he found them they were basically under the wrong case number. Oh, wow. And he found the inventory sheet for the gun. So once we saw that, we're like, oh shit, like, this story's true. Like, they got these guns in 2000 from Trish Farr, just like she had said, because she said her and Kenny got into a fight. And when law enforcement came out there, she told them everything. She goes, I told them everything that Kenny had done to me when he threatened me. He threatened to put me through a meat grinder. And in my interview with her, she said, Kenny said, I'm going to run you through the meat grinder like I did Dawn. Like, that's one thing that she told me in the interview. And I'm just like, what? I mean, it was just crazy. But at the time when I was interviewing her, we didn't know if the guns really existed or not. But Carol actually admitted it in her rebuttal that she gave these guns to Kenny. Yeah. And I hadn't seen the rebuttal until after my interview with Trish. So it was later when I saw the rebuttal, and I was like, oh shit, like, the guns are real. But one of the issues we have is the inventory sheet from the sheriff's department only shows like 11 or 12 guns. And the witnesses I've talked to have said there were 50 plus guns. Like, there was, I said, well, the inventory sheet shows like 11 or 12. They're like, no, there was more than that. They're like, there was a bathtub full, there was a closet full of them. They were stuffed under the bed. They were everywhere. So I don't know what happened to the rest of the guns. I'd like to know, and maybe someone out there does know. Maybe someone worked for the Hillsborough County Sheriff's Department, and maybe they have knowledge of where all these other guns went. But nonetheless, the guns did go to Kenny Farr. How they got to him is still kind of the question that needs to be answered.
Yeah, that would be the smoking gun. No pun intended. Well, pun intended, actually. So a lot of information there to unpack, but I want to take a couple steps back. First of all, have you seen the documentary Don't Fuck with Cats?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So when you brought up your Facebook group and stuff like that, if no one has watched that documentary, go watch that. I think it's still on Netflix, because it shows, like what you're talking about, these armchair detectives literally like follow a potential serial killer leading up to this certain point, and they call everything that this kid's doing. They uncover all this amazing things that are facts and true things, and they help solve and find this person by literally using like Google Maps, and like it's fascinating. But it kind of reminded me of what you're talking about, because law enforcement can only do so much. It can go on press conferences and news channels, but the power of social media and people coming together and this stuff can do a lot of things. I think personally, what kind of doesn't help with this particular situation is that Tiger King is so fucking crazy that like anything that comes out of it, it's almost like, oh well, it's Tiger King. Like it's not taken as serious as if it was something else. Does that make sense?
It does, because you have two totally different spectrums. You have one where you have these animal people who are over the top with things. And I've talked to some of them, and I mean, they seem like nice people, but it's still over the top with things. And when you have Joe Exotic and all the people that surrounded him, like Jeff Flo, Alan Glover,
they got the ponytail.
It's people look at that and they think these people are just crazy. Right. And is it really, like, is this stuff even true?
Right.
And then you put that in with this family of Don Lewis, who they are the most wonderful people. So nice.
Complete opposite.
Yes. So it really distorts like the real story. Right. And it's sad. And that's why I'm actively actually trying to get and find someone who wants to tell like the real story of what really happened with our Facebook group and how we uncovered all this information. I mean, I'm not recording right now, but normally I have a camera right over here and I have a camera here, and then I have that camera there, that when I'm doing all this stuff, I'm recording everything. Right. Even when, if I get off the phone and I just, going through my thoughts or talking about this is what we uncovered today. I mean, I've documented everything in hopes that one day somebody wants to tell the real story of all this information that we've uncovered. I mean, if people knew, matter of fact, in one of my interviews with someone, I'm not going to say who it was that was interviewing me, but this was in the middle of, I think this was after I had done my interview with the notary who ended up coming forward that they showed in episode 3. After I'd done that, I was doing an interview, and the person interviewing me said, this is like Don't Fuck with Cats on steroids.
Right.
And I was like, I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, we have uncovered so much information. We put so much stuff together that at one point I went and talked with, I can't say who it was that I talked to, but they told me, you've got everything right there. Like, you've solved this case. The only thing you don't have is a body, but or like with all this information that you all have, you don't even need a body for this. And I feel the same way. I feel like we've solved this case, but we can't, we can only do so much. We
Right.
can't, I can't go to the state attorney and say, hey, you need to move forward and do this.
Right.
I can only turn over the information that we've uncovered and let these agencies do what they're supposed to do. And I don't know, it's a lot of work.
It
I
is.
mean, even though we give them everything they need, they still have to go out and do the work. They still have to, they have to prove everything that I'm telling them. They have to go out and do all the work. And I'm not sure they have the energy to do it.
Right.
It's deep, but I will say that some of the stuff that we've uncovered, and I haven't put this out there yet either, but some of the stuff that we've uncovered happened in Polk County, Florida. So if we get to the point where we feel like we are really at a dead end wall, we'll be calling a meeting with Sheriff Grady, the family of Don Lewis and myself. We'll call a meeting with him, and I will say, this is what we found in your county. And I believe it's tied to motive, to the murder of Don Lewis. And if you're interested in, looking at it, we'll give you everything we have. Because if the motive is tied to his county, then this, he could get involved, because part of it happened in his county. And for those that know Sheriff Grady or Judd, it's Judd Grady. I think his first name's Judd, but or is it Grady Judd? I always get his name mixed up because it's like he has two last names.
Right. It does sound like two last names.
But he's the sheriff of Polk County, but he doesn't mess around. He's when you see some of his press conferences where they've arrested some of their own deputies, and he doesn't mess around. So
right.
I don't think would have to go that route, but if we get to a point and this family feels like everything has been done, then we'll go elsewhere.
Right. Well, that actually brings me to I want to go back again to kind of Kenny and stuff, but I want to talk about memory for a second, because
Talk about what?
Memory, like your memory, not yours, but
sure.
In general. So I talked to a psychologist from University of California, Irvine, Dr. Elizabeth Loftus, who has testified in Michael Jackson, Harvey Weinstein, Bill Cosby, Robert Durst. There was a show on, I don't know, some network. It was done very well, called Buried, about the very first murder case that got a conviction based off of memory alone. And she deals with repressed memory, not like if you have Alzheimer's. She deals with things that you think you remember that you're basically making up in your head. She did the Oklahoma City bomber, like Timothy McVeigh, like major cases, all with memory. And I learned a lot from her about, like, when you're a kid and then you become an adult and you remember something and you tell, like, let's say your mom or dad, and they're like, that's not how that happened, or that's not how she talked about that kind of stuff. Because a lot of people will remember certain things in certain ways, especially also with interrogation. That's why you get a lot of false convictions, false confessions, because the cops are sitting there for 14 hours telling you something to the point where you actually believe you did this.
Right.
So you actually brought this up already with Kenny. I was taken back by that part in that episode. I was very confused because when they asked him the one question, he completely backtracked. It was almost like he completely forgot. And then, like you said, he switched back and said, oh, no, Don gave me those. When in a previous thing that you said with Carol, she admitted she gave Kenny those guns because he asked for it. So, but really what you need to find out is when he was given the guns and all that stuff. But my question to you is, with all of these people, not just the types of people that they are, but this happened in 1997. The people that you're interviewing and talking, is it far-fetched to say, like, do they remember every minute detail like they're saying, or is there stuff that is kind of, they get that it's stuff that will fit their narrative and they get tunnel vision, confirmation biased, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Before I answer, I do want to say, you've had some really incredible guests on your show. When I was
Thank you.
looking through your list of guests, I was just like, wow, he has talked to some people, and then I listened to some of them, and some of them are people that nobody would even notice. But when you listen to the interviews, you're like, oh, wow.
It's crazy.
But you've had some really incredible people on your show, but I wanted to make sure I told you that. But yeah, the memory thing it's an issue because this thing is now 24 years old, the case. And a good example of that is one of the witnesses that I talked to by the name of, I'll just say Mr. Moore, when he was a volunteer out at Wildlife on Easy Street, which is now Big Cat Rescue. But when I first talked to him, my first conversation, I had heard that he was saying that he had seen Don Lewis that weekend that he went missing. Nobody else saw him that weekend, so here's someone that saw him. So I called the guy and I said, hey, I just want to know, when's the last time you saw Don Lewis? He said, well, I can't be certain. I'm not real sure. He said it was on I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but it seemed like he said it was a Saturday. It was on a Saturday, and there was a guy that was selling a motorcycle to Don, and it was going to be loaded up, but the guy rode the motorcycle out there, and then Don needed Mr. Moore to give the guy a ride back home because he was selling the bike. But first time I talked to him, he couldn't remember what weekend it was. And he would say, I really don't think it was the weekend he went missing because of Ann McQueen's interview. He had seen the interview I had with Ann McQueen, and Ann McQueen said, I saw Don Friday at work. He left at 1:30. Around 4:00, I started calling him. I called him all weekend. He never called me back. I never got a hold of him again. And Don Lewis would always call back Ann McQueen. Ann was his secretary and also his best friend. So Jim had seen that interview, and he would say, I just don't think it was that weekend because of what Ann is saying, that he never called her back. Then I talked to him a couple of weeks later, and, he said, hey, there was something I remembered that I wanted to tell you, and he's giving me information. And I asked him about, did you figure out which weekend it was? He's like, no, I just can't remember. I said, well, maybe you should call the sheriff's department and at least tell them what you know. And he said, I actually did talk to them back then and gave them a statement. And I said, well, because he had given me some new information in the call, which prompted me to tell him to go talk to them again.
Right.
And he said, okay, I'll do that. And he said, and I'll ask them if they, will let me read my statement that I gave to them back in 1997. I was like, yeah, that would refresh your memory as far as which weekend it was. Well, he had a meeting with them. He went there. After his meeting, he called me and said that they had lost their statement, or lost his statement. He said, they don't have it. They don't have a copy of my statement. I'm like, really? He said, yeah. He said, I'm really bummed because I would have told them exactly when it was that I saw him. Mm-hmm. But he couldn't remember. And then I had him on my channel probably a week or two later. And how that thing all came up was really weird, because just a few days before he was on my channel, let me just say, in the beginning, I was trying to get him on my channel and he wouldn't come on my channel. He wouldn't do an interview with me, but he'd talk to me on the phone. Right. And I was in Florida, and Carol had made a video in her little diary thing, and she had a picture of this guy on her green screen, and talked about him and all these different things about him or whatever. And then the next day, him and I just happened to have talked for some reason, and he agreed to come on my channel to do an interview. And I thought, oh, great. And I'm like, well, I'm leaving in a couple of days. I can come out to your place and do it, or we can just do it via, Zoom or whatever. So we ended up doing it via Zoom or Yardstream. And during this interview, and it's live, I asked him, when's the last time you saw Don Lewis? And he says, oh, I saw him the Sunday before he went missing, just the day before. I mean, he said it so matter of fact, like,
Yeah, confident.
Yeah. And I didn't call him out on it because I didn't want to sit there and go, whoa, whoa, whoa. You told me you didn't know which weekend. Are you saying now your memory is better than it was, a couple of weeks ago? And now that they've lost your statement, you can say whatever you want. I mean,
Right.
I really was caught off guard, but I just let it go. And I just let him talk. And he did a lot of talking in that interview, but it really caught me off guard that it was, I saw him the Sunday before he went missing, like the night before. And he was 100% certain. And when it comes to, like memory, I don't know if his memory got better all of a sudden, or if this video that Carol put out had something to do with his memory. Or, I mean, because here's the thing, if someone actually saw him that weekend, then it's possible Carol would have seen him Monday morning as he was leaving. But I don't think that's the case. And I'll tell you why in a little bit. But there have been others that they would tell me, I don't really remember, the exact dates or what he said, but he said something along the lines of, I'm scared she's going to do something to me. He said, like this was I think the auto mechanic had said, now actually it wasn't Dale, because Dale said he remembered exactly what it was, but it was someone else that had talked to Don a few months before he went missing. He said, I don't know his exact words, but it was something along the lines that he was scared that Carol was going to do something to him. But nobody's going to remember exact details. And then of course, after they watch the show, when it comes to their memory, there's going to be things that pollute their memories. And, for some of them, it's their memories are really clear. Like Anne McQueen, his best friend / secretary. Mm-hmm. She remembers dates. She remembers, when I talk to her, she'll say, because I'll say, hey, what about this property deal that happened, with Don and whatever? Carol says this money went here and there. And Anne to this day still remembers. She'll say, no, that's not what happened. What happened was Mr. So-and-so approached Don Lewis, and the deal was for, she'll say, I think Don made $18,000 on that. And when you start looking up all the property records, it matches everything that Anne McQueen says. Now, for her memory, she has a great memory and can remember so many things, just especially numbers and dates. Because she'll say, if you go look up, let me think of one of the, I don't want to use real names on here, but she'll say, if you go look up Miss Grady's property, Don would have bought that on May 5th, 1997. And then he sold it to the Joneses on May 28th. And he sold it for, $85,000, and he bought it for 30. And like, she has all this information. Then you go to look it up and it's all true, I'm like, but for people like her, it's great. I mean, she was even hypnotized in the last year to see if there was anything else that she had forgotten. And there wasn't anything, like there was nothing new that came out of that. But then there's others that, they're like, well, I don't remember if it was 1996 or 1997, or, some of them, the memory is just not as clear.
Right.
And then I always have to wonder too, after people see the show, they get clouded. Mm-hmm. And that was the nice thing with the notary. The notary has never seen the show. They didn't know anything about the show.
Wow.
And so when the notary called the tip line, she had not, she didn't know anything. She didn't
She
know
wasn't
what was going
tainted.
on.
Yeah.
No, but it is a big issue because it is 24 years later.
Right.
And I mean, I've only been working on it for 20 months, and I have to be real careful with, like remembering things. I'm like, I got to make sure, I got to look at my notes and make sure that's what I wrote down, because I have notebooks full of notes, and then I record so much stuff, but I have to go back and make sure that what I think I remember is real. And that's just in less than 2 years.
Right. Imagine 20 plus.
Oh,
Right.
yeah. I mean, we're talking 1997. I mean, if I had to think back to like 1997, I can think of 1998. Like there's events that happened in 1998 that I remember very clearly. So I think with some things, when there's a traumatic event, some of these things are burned in your brain, but like I know the 1998 Billboard Hit of the Year was a song called Too Close by Next. I mean, but there's a good reason why I remember those things. I remember how many American Music Awards they received. They still have the record, but for most of us, the memory is it's a tough thing.
It's difficult. It's hard to prove, and it's hearsay sometimes. And to your point, when a documentary like this of this caliber comes out, people might change their stories to fit a better narrative, to make them look like in a better light, or whatever.
Or like they know more than they really do.
They
want to play a bigger role.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that has happened. That also happened with someone that called the tip line, that they gave some information. I was like, wow, okay, they've described the same thing that others have described. Well, when it came time to meet with them in person, they blew the story out of proportion. And then it became just too much where it wasn't believable. I was like, why didn't you tell me that when you first talked to me? Like when we talked, you told me all these things, but now all of a sudden, where he's buried.
Right.
Like, why didn't you tell me that to begin with? That would be an important piece. And, I think you're right, where people, they exaggerate a little bit, and then it turns into, then they're not credible at all.
Exactly.
And anything they say, you're just like, I can't believe any of it. Although there's other people saying the same type thing. It's a witness that can't be used, and the information can't be, unless you can actually prove what they're saying.
Exactly.
Which there's just not a lot of evidence in this case. There's not a body, there's not a murder weapon. 1997, there wasn't a lot of cameras out there. If this happened today, I think it'd be pretty easy to solve.
Right. Yeah. It's a lot, like a lot of cases, it's a lot of circumstantial evidence, which I feel like I've talked to a bunch of homicide, and they're like, all evidence is circumstantial. Even DNA can be circumstantial, except for, I think they said, like, eyewitness testimony is the nail in the coffin most times, of like, that's not circumstantial. Like, I literally saw this person kill this person.
Right.
I can prove it. That is without a doubt, beyond a reasonable doubt. But you brought up something I kind of want to talk about, is about the witnesses, right? I'm going to talk about John in the doc. They talk about John Phillips, who initially was a lawyer for the family, for Don Lewis's family. Side note, being completely transparent, I am more than likely interviewing him next week as well. So just a heads up, not to, like I said, no bait and switch here. I reach out to a lot of people, even potentially Carol Baskin as well, but we'll see, because I don't know if she'll do it or not. She'll probably.
I bet she will. If you don't let her know you've talked to me, you probably have a pretty good chance with her, because she interviews with anybody.
That's what I figured. This is going to be out, so she'll see it. So I don't really care. I'm not looking to I might hold on to it, but the evidence is it's pressing. So that's why I'd rather do it now.
Yes, I agree.
But anyway,
Yes.
so John Phillips, so he was the family's lawyer, and then he switched to now he's Joe Exotic's lawyer. But what I was kind of noticing in the doc was he's getting all of these, what were they called? What when he would get them to like switch their statement and stuff like that.
To recant.
Yeah, they were recanting what they were saying, right? But it goes back to our point earlier of like the types of people that these people are these over the top. Jeff Lowe is, from all accounts on the documentary, a piece of shit. A lot of these people are not good people to begin with. So
Right.
just like any prosecutor that I've talked to, there has to be a reliable witness who is not that these people are, but like, that's why they don't have like crackheads and people like that. And, these rats that are whatever on the witness stand, right?
Mhm.
That's literally what homicide detectives tell me. They can't use them. They're not
Right.
credible. So
Right.
can like, and then what happened is John Phillips, the lawyer, the family let him go. And then they retained your services, the Armchair stuff.
Well, actually,
So what happened? Yeah, I'm getting to the point of like what happened with that.
actually, I was working with them long before Phillips came into the picture.
Okay.
And a lot of people don't understand that because he said in the show, well, they picked Ripper over me.
I noticed that.
Yeah, there was never a choice of them having to pick me or him. We did totally different things. His job was to be a lawyer and to do things in the courtroom because they wanted to find out what happened to their dad. And one of the things that we had decided to do was for him to file this pure bill of discovery complaint, motion, whatever you call them. And it was a good idea because you're not really suing anybody for money or, anything except information. You're just trying to get someone under oath. And our ultimate goal is to get Carol Baskin under oath and ask her a few questions that we have. So the way it started is.
So like a deposition?
Yeah, like a deposition.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. We would like to have Carol under oath and have her answer some questions. Absolutely deposition. But I got into this after I'd watched the show. I formed a little group. I'll kind of tell the backstory because there was never a choice where the family had to pick me or him.
Right. Okay.
I had watched the show. I started putting videos out on my YouTube channel. We ended up tracking down the granddaughter of Don Lewis. She had a TikTok channel, and I wanted to talk to the family because I wanted to see what information they had. We tracked down the granddaughter, and she was impossible to get a hold of because she had, went from 1,500 subscribers to like 50,000 or something just overnight.
Right.
So you couldn't get a message to her, but we ended up tracking down her fiance. And then we found out where he worked, and I called him at work and I was like, hey, this is who I am. He's like, huh? You're what? I said, dude, I just make videos on YouTube. I've helped people in the past with, wrongful conviction stuff. I said, I just exposed a college up in Kansas for kicking people out of school because of color of their skin. And I said, but we've uncovered some information that might be helpful to the family of Don Lewis. And I would like to get an email or something so I can contact them. And anyway, his fiance called me back that night. I talked to her, told her all the stuff that we'd uncovered. She reached out to Donna Pettis, which is the oldest daughter of Don Lewis.
That's the blonde, right?
Yes, the blonde. And then Donna emailed me and I sent her emails with, these are the things that we've uncovered. I gave her links to my videos. And within 2 weeks, I went out to Florida because I was getting people that were contacting me, but they didn't want to talk on the phone. They're scared I was recording it, or, they're like, I'll talk to you in person, but I'm not going to talk to you on the phone. Mm-hmm. So I was like, and I had like 4 or 5 of them like that. And I'm in Oklahoma. I'm not in Florida. So I was like, I got to go to Florida to meet with these people because obviously they're scared, but they have information. So I went out there. I got there. It's just kind of weird. I went out there. I drove straight through. It's like 21 hours. But I pulled into the hotel parking lot at 12:01 a.m. and it just happened to be Don Lewis's birthday when I didn't plan that out. Like I pulled into the parking spot, went to turn my car off and looked down to see what time I'd write. And it was 12:01. And I was like,
weird.
Wow, I just arrived on this man's birthday. And the next day I ended up going out and meeting. Actually, was it that day? Yeah, that was a Thursday because I think I left Wednesday, got there Thursday. I went out and met with the family on Thursday evening for 3 or 4 hours, probably. Talked to them, met the daughters and his ex-wife Gladys, and I was out there for almost 3 weeks, and getting as much information from them. One of his daughters, Gail, had boxes and boxes of documents from when she worked for her dad. So it's going through all of that stuff, just seeing if there's anything in there. What I was really looking for were documents that had Carol's actual handwriting, not copies, but her actual handwriting because of the documents that seemed to have been forged.
Yeah.
And I wanted
the will and all that stuff. You wanted to
yes,
compare. Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, so I spent, what it was, 3 weeks or whatever it was out there. I came back to Oklahoma and was home for another week and a half. And I had to go back out there again because there were more people that had information. I went out there again, spent some time with the family again. And then that would have been, I think, June. I think sometime around June, they were getting tons of calls from media, wanting to do interviews. And the family is a real private family. They don't want to do media. Like they made it very clear, like, we don't want to be in front of the cameras. We just want to know what happened. We'll get in front of the cameras if we have to, but that's not what, we just want to remain private. So in June, I think it was June, they were getting all this media requests and they would call me and say, hey, so-and-so from, whoever wants to know, like wants us to talk to them about, this and that. And we just don't have all the information. Like we don't know all the facts. And I said, well, have them call me and I'll talk to them. These are like 48 hours mystery, Dateline and all this stuff. And then at some point, I think it was Donna said, I'm going to talk to Linda and Gail and see if you can just be our media spokesperson so that we don't have to talk to all these media people, because every time they call, we have to call you to get all the facts because we have no idea. Like they never knew about all these things that had happened.
Right.
So I think it was June 2020, they hired me to be their spokesperson and they wanted to pay me to do it, but I wouldn't do it. Like I've never charged them a dime for anything. Me and my group, we volunteer to help people. If we can help, we will. So I became their spokesperson in like June, but I had been working with them. I went out there, it would have been late April. So in May of 2020 is when I started working with them. And then we decided at some point to put a reward fund together, and we ended up raising $100,000. And when we did that, when we got the money raised, we decided we'd have a press conference and announce to the world that there's $100,000 reward. Well, about a week before that press conference, someone that was sort of related to the family was calling different attorneys to see if there was an attorney that would help them out, take a case with them or do something. And I had called some attorneys too and getting nowhere. Nobody wanted to mess with it. When I would say Tiger King, they would just laugh. They're like, no, I don't want any part of it.
I think it's a joke. That's what we talked about earlier. Is like, they're not taking it serious.
They're like, I don't want to be mixed up in that at all.
Right.
So we're hitting brick wall after brick wall. And then one of the, someone close to the family ended up getting a hold of John Phillips. And the family or close relative of the family, I'd say, I guess he's related sort of, by almost marriage, but he called and said, hey, this guy said he would take it. He knows all about the show, and, you know, he's all gung ho and he'll do whatever and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, great. So the family decided to drive over there and meet with him in Jacksonville. And then Anne McQueen also went. She went with them just for support. Like, she didn't want to do anything with Carol. She didn't want to sue Carol or anything, which she has a lawsuit against Carol right now, which is pretty scary. But they went over there, met with him. I sat in on the meeting on Zoom. I was like right here. They were there, talked. And then afterwards they decided that, yeah, we'll retain him, because at that point there was no other attorneys that would even,
Right.
you know, I mean, it was just a joke. But that was I believe that was sometime in August of 2020, because we had the press conference in August, and they hired him about right around a week before the press conference. So he hadn't been on board, maybe a week and a half before we had our press conference is when he was brought on. And, you know, so that's August 2020, May, June, July. So I had been working with them for 3 or 4 months beforehand.
Right.
And I was very transparent with them to, you know, this is one of the reasons I do these things. Like, I've been through the ringer myself. I know what it's like to be wronged by the justice system. And, you know, if I had had help, it would have been great, and blah, blah, blah. So we had the press conference. John Phillips announced at the press conference that there was a lawsuit against Carol Baskin, and it was a pure bill of discovery lawsuit. And that was great. You know, it grabbed some media attention, and we did want to get Carol under deposition. The family still wants to get her under deposition. And then, do you want me to go into detail of what exactly happened after that?
Absolutely.
All right. Because this was filmed. I mean, it was documented, and I documented everything that happened, like on my end. And I know the producers of the show did as well. But that was filed. And then it wasn't long after that, Dancing with the Stars came out.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a commercial that was made. I don't know if you saw the commercial.
When they're all tight and they're all close together in the living room.
And yeah, that was actually his office.
Oh,
that was his law office where that commercial was filmed. So yeah, they have the commercial for, you know, if you know what happened to our dad. And it was a great idea. You know, it did bring attention, and it created a lot of attention. I mean, it was just a local commercial, you know, just in that little regional area. But of course it was shown everywhere. I mean, it had over 1 million views on YouTube. Like,
and this aired on the commercial during Dancing with the Stars.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
Yes. Yeah, but it was, and like I said, it was only a regional thing. So it was like $3,500 for the spot.
Mm-hmm.
But it was such a big story that, you know, TMZ and all these other news, they're reporting on it the next morning. And so it was a big, you know, it was a big thing. Well, then after that happened, this is going to create so much drama, but I don't care. I think people should know. After that happened, there was an influx of messages of all these articles about the commercial and what a brilliant idea and all these things. It was just text message after text message of, you know, look what I did. I can't believe this. I wouldn't have been able to buy this much publicity ever. Like, this is the best publicity I've ever gotten, and all this. And
who's saying this?
While, John Phillips.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Because not the family. The family doesn't want the publicity. Like, they want to just, they don't want to be in the limelight.
Right,
They're a very private family. And one of the family members asked me, like, why are we getting all these text messages? Why isn't he working on the case and trying to, like, why is this happening. And then there was an influx of media that wanted to do interviews with the family, and they didn't want to do it, but they did it because they thought they needed to, because he was working pro bono, and they're really nice people, and they're like, well, we need to do it because he's working pro bono, and he's spending time trying to help us. And I was like, I get it, but if you sign something and he's going to get a percentage of the win, if you win, then that's not free. I mean,
Right.
He is risking his time up front. But if a case gets dismissed in Florida, from what I understand, the plaintiffs can be responsible for the lawyer fees of the defendant. So, and the attorneys don't pay that. It's the plaintiffs that pay that. Anyway, so they were a little frustrated with all the TV appearances and all that stuff that was going on. And then he had an idea of doing a commercial with their mom, to have their mom do a commercial on the next episode of Dancing with the Stars. And it was something to the effect that their mom was going to get on TV and say something about, Don Lewis, cheated on me with Carol. And did he, cheat on Carol as well? And this was motive for her to get rid of him, or something like that. Mm-hmm. And the daughters were like, no, we're not putting our mom on TV, and we're not going to be especially talking about our dad out there cheating on our mom. We're not going to do it. And I guess someone was upset about this. So they had the brilliant idea of filing an amended complaint on, I think it was a Tuesday. So I believe it was the second week of Dancing with the Stars, because it was less than a week after the first Dancing with the Stars. And we all thought that Carol would be voted off in the second week, because the first night she was just not a good dancer. So everyone had kind of predicted, not just people in my group, but the world had predicted that she would be the first one voted off the show. So before that show aired, there was an amended complaint filed. So it went from the pure bill of discovery to a defamation lawsuit on behalf of Anne McQueen and the three daughters. Now, the three daughters didn't have a defamation case against Carol, nor did they want to sue Carol for defamation. And they did not even know what was in the complaint. All they had seen was like a cover page of it. They didn't know when it was going to be filed, or exactly when, I guess. But the merits of the case had not been explained to them ever. There was never an explanation of, this is what we have, this is what we're going to do, blah, blah, blah.
For the defamation.
For either.
Oh, wow.
For either. Matter of fact, after our press conference, there were copies of the complaint. Anne McQueen got a copy of it. And she said, oh, I didn't even know my name was going to be on this. She learned that she was suing Carol Baskin after the press conference for it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's pretty scary. And there were other things that were in the amended complaint that the family did not want out there. They made it very clear there were things that they did not want out there at all. Mm-hmm. And it was put in that amended complaint. And when the amended complaint was filed, it was filed like the end of the day on Tuesday. And I think it was about 15 minutes before Dancing with the Stars started, a press release went out to all the media with daughters of Don Lewis file another lawsuit against Carol Baskin, or something like that. And during Dancing with the Stars, they actually asked Carol about, like, hey, there's been a new lawsuit filed today. And Carol didn't know anything about it because it had been filed just like right before the show started. So for media purposes, it's great. It's brilliant. But the daughters, they didn't want to sue Carol for defamation. What they wanted was to get her under oath so that there could be some questions answered about their dad.
Right.
So when the defamation lawsuit was filed, the next day, there were articles coming out, and a lot of them were like one of them was like the 10 bad things or 10 petty things about the Don Lewis family or something like that. But there were things in that amended complaint. For example, John Phillips wanted to write a letter to ABC on behalf of the family about some of the comments that they were making to Carol in the show, like, Carol, you killed it out there. Basically, he wanted a letter together that the family was complaining about the show making a joke out of their dad's death. And the family, like, no, we don't care about that. Like, who cares what people are saying? Like, that's not something we even worry about. They don't even know. Like, they didn't even know most of the stuff that was happening. They didn't want that letter written, and they told him, no, you're not writing a letter to ABC. Well, all that stuff that was going to be in the letter was in the amended complaint. And that made for great TV and great media. And then another media onslaught of, hey, can we interview you? Blah, blah, blah. And it was embarrassing for the family. I mean, they're like, people are going to think we're so petty that we're complaining about what these people are saying to Carol Baskin on a show. And they weren't happy. I mean, they were not happy at all. And then I had a call with them, and, you know, I had actually for a week or so had defended John Phillips with, you know, he was doing things, and I was just telling him, like, one of the family members, like, just let it play out. We'll see what happens. Like, all the text messages about, you know, look how great I am. Look how good of an idea I had. And I was like, just let it go. Don't worry about it, you know. But after the amended complaint was filed, I had no way. I mean, I had no way to defend him. I was just like,
right.
Let's have a call. Let's talk. And as I was talking to them, I said, well, didn't you know what was in the amended complaint? I'm like, you know, you can't tell me the stuff that he's telling you in detail and all that, because it's, you know, your attorney-client stuff. But all of them was like, no, we had no idea what was going to be in there. Like, you know, I was like, didn't he go over the merits of the case with you? And they're like, no, not ever. I was like, what? I'm like, no, all we've been doing is all this media stuff. It's just media this, media that. And anyway, that they were upset and they fired him because he was not listening to them. He did not have their best interest at mind, and they were done. So they fired him. And that's
what happened. That's what it looked like in the doc. They kind of like said, like, they didn't want all the media attention, and he was very like media hungry and this and
yes.
that. I will say he was the first person to respond to me in about 25 minutes, not knocking him. I mean, I appreciate it. But I mean, in his defense, me personally, I think they've done, I don't know what the family has done before that strategy, but have they exhausted other ways and other things to do before? Maybe, I mean, that is a good idea to put a lot of spotlight on it, just like Tiger King in general. If Tiger King never happened, if Joe Exotic did not exist, no one would know about Carol Baskin, and no one would know about Don Lewis in the way that we know about them because of the media and the way that it's portrayed. So in his defense, and to your point, like you just said, you kind of defended him a little bit. But I mean, I think the media strategy can work and does work in some cases, because like you said in the beginning, you know, you're guilty by, you know, not you don't have to be proven, whatever the proven guilty,
guilty until proven
exactly
innocent.
but like the media, I mean, this cancel culture, it's a big thing now, to where you could put something out about someone whether it's true or not, and if the media runs with it, that's good enough for the most of the population, unfortunately.
Like Richard Jewell's a great example of that.
Exactly. The Atlanta
Olympic
the guy,
bombing.
yeah, they got accused of bombing the Olympics,
Yes.
which he didn't do.
Correct.
Right, exactly. So, and that's before social media. So imagine how easy it is now. So in his defense, do you think that was a good strategy, and just maybe it just kind of went a little bit too far, maybe? Or,
well, I think it was a bad strategy because he ended up getting fired. And I mean, obviously it was a bad strategy, but the media attention that they had, you can't get any more media attention than the 64 million households that watched it. But there were things that could be done with the media that you didn't have to do to try to get these weird stories out there that made the family look petty.
Right, that's true.
I mean, there was so much media attention, and I didn't want to do media because at the time I was being filmed for the show, and I did not want to put anything out there that the show had seen because I wanted them to tell the story. And I wasn't under any contracts or anything with the producers of the show, but the family, when I first started talking to them, they said, we owe a lot to these producers because they're the ones that put our dad's story out there for people to see. Right. So we're going to be loyal to them first and foremost. And they made that very clear with me and everybody else that that's where their loyalty lied. So there was a big story about the Facebook group and, all this stuff that was being uncovered. And I got approached by tons of media people, People TV and Nancy Grace and just, all of them. But the family did not want the big media storm, and to really tell the story properly, you need someone from the family to be there with you. Right. I mean, if I just go on by myself, it's not as good as having one of his daughters on the show. And there were times when I told some media people that, I said, I could do it. I really don't want to, but I could. I said, but the daughters don't want to do the media thing. There's so much stuff happening right now behind the scenes that they feel like there's enough momentum moving forward that they're going to have their day in court. And we had a good plan of action moving forward we didn't need the media at that time because Netflix had done the job for us. What we needed, or they needed, was actual facts and evidence to be presented to someone that can bring charges up, and there were so many things going on behind the scenes that they didn't want to do the media thing. And I wanted to, my position with them, and still is if they want to do media stuff, then I'll make that happen. But they don't want to. They want the work to be focused on uncovering things that will help in a courtroom, because at the end of the day, the media cannot they can help get the exposure, but once you're in the courtroom, the media cannot determine what's going to happen. It's going to be what evidence. I mean, the Kyle Rittenhouse is a great example of that. Everyone in the media, like, he's guilty, he's did this, and I don't want to get into that because I know that's real political, but, after the jury deliberated, it didn't matter what the media said. It was the evidence that was brought in the courtroom,
Sure.
But they didn't want to do they just didn't want to do the media thing, and they still don't. They're private. And I think it was a bad strategy because I think there's enough evidence there that eventually, and we have Alex Spiro now as the attorney working with us. And Alex, I don't know if you know who he is, but that's Jay-Z's attorney. He was attorney for Elon Musk.
Wow.
Mick Jagger, Nicki Minaj, Charles Oakley, Robert Kraft in the New England Patriots, the owner. That's he's a gigantic attorney. We've been working with him for 3 or 4 months, maybe even longer. And the only thing you've seen of that is TMZ found out about it, and they did an article about it. But when they called his office, they didn't give a comment or anything. I mean, obviously, if he thought, and he's one of the top attorneys in the country, if he thought you needed the media to do something,
He would do it.
He would have been all over it, but
Right.
not a word from him to the media about anything, which, you know, that tells me that you don't need media. You need the facts, and you need someone that's going to work the legal system the right way. But I mean, you know, I liked John. You know, I when he was brought on, I liked him. We had a lot of fun hanging out, but at some point it just got to be, it wasn't about the family, it was about something else. And that wasn't you know, that wasn't what I had signed up for, and it's definitely not what the family signed up for. Now, what I know later, I mean, John had asked me when we were in Florida, he asked me, you know, why do you do this stuff? And I told him about my ordeal and my court stuff, and said I went through a bad divorce. I said it took me 4.5 years. I gave him details of what happened. I said, but at the end of everything, I got the parenting time and the custody split right up the middle with my ex-wife. I said, and the charges that were brought against me, they had to dismiss them or drop them. But I had 3 telephone harassment charges that I took, because my attorney said, he goes, look, I think you had good reason for doing it because you felt like your daughter's lives were in danger. He said, but under the law, because you called her once and she hung up and said, don't bother her or whatever, you called her back 3 more times. He's like, under the law, he said, you're probably guilty of it. He said, we can go to trial. He goes, but there's, you know, a chance that you could be found guilty of it. And he goes, and you might be guilty of telephone harassment. He said, or you just take you take the deal they're offering, which was no fines, no whatever. I had gotten charged with like a criminal threat thing. It was like a felony. It was serious. And it was right in the middle of my divorce. And I spent 47 days not seeing my daughters, which I had seen them every day of their lives. So it was really tough for me, and it was tough for my daughters too. But as I told him, I said, if there would have been any merits to the case, the judge would not have given me 50% custody and parenting time to my 2 girls.
Right.
I said, but I took the telephone harassment charges because my attorney said you could fight it. It's going to cost you about $25,000 to fight it for his fees. And he said, and if you get off, he said, the only thing you're going to have is not these 3 misdemeanors. He said, they're not giving you a fine. They're not making you take, you know, domestic violence classes or anything like that. He said, you gain nothing by going to trial. But I had told Phillips all of that, and he knows that the charges were dropped. But even to this day, I see him out there on his Facebook and other places saying, well, I quit working with Ripper because of the way he treated his ex-wife. Now, he's an attorney, and he's got a license plate that says justice on it. They showed it in the show. So he knows that I went to court, I did my thing, and I came out on the other side just how I wanted, with custody of my girls. And then he's going to go around telling people, and I got the screenshots, saying I quit working with him because of the way he treats women. I'm like, that's such bullshit. But I'm not surprised. This is a guy that said, well, this is a guy that sits in a gaming chair behind a computer. I'm like, I mean, how petty can someone be? But yeah, I mean, it's almost like I took a candy bar from him or something. And, you know, I don't get it, but I mean, at the end of the day, he got fired, and for good reason. But, you know, I liked him in the beginning. I thought he is a nice guy, but I don't think he's a nice guy. I think he's just a media whore. That's, you know,
that's how he was portrayed in the documentary towards the end. Cause I was all excited cause of course it's Netflix, who do a great job with these documentaries, making you think one thing and feel a certain way. And then by the end of it, you're like, I fucking hate this person. So I thought that's exactly how they portrayed him at the end. They almost put him, it was like they almost put him in a corner with a dunce hat on, and he was in trouble like a little kid. So now you're explaining this, it kind of explains, you know.
Someone had asked me in my interview the other day that I did, and it was a live interview. They said, how do you think were you happy with the way that you and others were portrayed in the show?
Mm.
And my answer was, I think everybody was portrayed just like how they are in real life, because I've met some of these people in real life, and from what I saw and experienced in real life, it's exactly how these people are in real life. I mean, I didn't see anyone in that show that came across any different than my experience with them. But some people can claim because of editing and whatever, but in season 2 of Tiger King, I really think they softened the blow on him, because when they interviewed me and Donna after he was fired, we didn't hold back. I mean, I went through the whole thing with the amended complaint. He wanted to go on all these media shows. They kept telling him no, and he kept pushing them. And, then it was, I want you to go on Dr. Oz with me. And one of the daughters said, Dr. Oz, although he does do true crime like on Thursdays or something now,
yeah.
But most people think Dr. Oz is, for health, mental health, physical, but this family is really private. But one of the daughters said, the last thing I want to do is go sit in front of a doctor and have them diagnose me or talk about my past and the traumatic events that I've gone through because of my father. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to be a private person. And for someone to try to push them into going onto a show that they didn't want to go on, I think is really wrong, but it's free exposure,
Right.
I mean, I get that aspect of it, but I've always put them, that whole family first. I mean, I could have gone out and, I mean, like the guy I interviewed with the other day, he said, I'm a slut when it comes to attention and publicity. He said, not me, but the guy that was interviewing me. He said, if anyone from the media comes to me, he said, I'm giving it all up. He said, put me out there. You can pimp me out there if it gives me some exposure.
Right.
But, I'm just not that way. I really have to think about if what I'm going to do is good for the family or not, because I could care less if people really liked me or what I stand for. But, this family needs real help. They don't need people out there. Matter of fact, here, and I'm sure you're going to ask me about the psychic, but I got a message. I saw that coming. That's because I'm psychic, but I got a message from someone yesterday saying that John Phillips contacted the psychic and told the psychic that I was trashing the psychic on a podcast, and that one of the family members said we picked the wrong psychic.
What?
That came directly from the psychic, that John Phillips contacted the psychic and was tattletelling, basically.
Oh, this is tea. All right.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I when I was reading that, I'm like, what is this guy in the second grade? He's like, hey, by the way, Ripper was trashing you on a podcast, and one of the family members said they picked the wrong psychic. Like, who cares? I mean, who cares what my opinion is of someone else? I mean, but I'm not, that's a true story.
Wow.
I'm not making that up. I'm just like, so you go from the game chair, which I still don't understand that deal, to calling the psychic, or even, I don't know how he was contacted, but he said the family's former attorney contacted me and said Ripper was trashing me on a podcast, and someone from the family said they picked the wrong psychic. I'm just like, wow, man, that's crazy.
Which obviously is not true. You never said any of those things, neither did the family.
Well, what I said was, I was there, like when we were filming, or they were filming the psychic, I was there the whole day. And never once do I recall anyone talking about chicken. You know, the chicken wrapper that they showed in the show. Like, I was there the whole day, and that day I was quiet because, they're filming with the psychic, has nothing to do with me, but I'm trying to pick up all the information that I can. So even one of the daughters said, "You were really quiet today. Were you feeling okay?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm fine." I said, I was listening to every word to see if I could learn something. But
Right.
the first time I heard about the chicken stuff was when I watched the show, because when they were filming on the curb down there, I wasn't down there. I was at the van.
Yep.
And when I saw that on the show, I was like, I looked at my wife. I was like, we never talked about chicken. I'm like,
Right.
what? I'm like, where did that come from? But in one of these podcasts I did, I said, yeah, I don't think we ever talked about chicken. And, I do believe that there's some people out there that have some abilities of some sort,
Mm-hmm.
like remote viewing and other things. But I said, I don't think that guy's the guy that has any kind of ability. That's all I said,
Right.
and I probably laughed about it, which it's just my opinion, I mean, but for this guy to be a little tattletale and I'm just like, man,
That is kind of petty. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that is actually, I have a couple more questions, and that's one of them of the psychic. Me and a friend of mine and my buddy Rocco, who's been on the podcast a couple of times. We love Tiger King. We talk about it all the time. And we watched that. It brought us to tears, and almost like, not in a sad way, because he's talking about, and I honestly, I immediately felt bad for the family, because I'm like, this is, and the cop kind of said it too, like, he's okay with them finding any way. They're trying to do anything they can to get any type of answer. And the psychic, I mean, when he's sitting there in the curb and he's, oh, the porta potty, go behind the porta potty and look at the chicken wrapper. I've been talking about chicken all day. It's kind of like, I felt bad for them, because it's like, if he's bullshitting, he's making it like giving them false hope. He's saying, oh, this is where he died, and all
right.
those things. And I was like, damn. And she's like rubbing his back and, like genuinely feeling sorry for him, because he's
Yes.
having so much emotion. I felt terrible for them, but I felt like angry, because I'm like, dude, this guy's totally bullshitting these people. I think that's my opinion. But
yeah.
Anyway, so how did that come about? The psychic, that shit was hilarious to me and my friend. But
yeah, and I can when you say you think he was bullshitting them, I agree with you, because we had dinner after that event happened, that traumatic event. And during dinner, he told someone that he had went down to that curb and had just lost it and was just bawling and crying down there the whole time. What he didn't know is that I was standing on a public street, which in Florida, any state, really, if you're in a public space, you can record whatever you want.
mm-hmm.
And when he came up and kicked the chicken wrapper, he kicked it a couple of times to turn it over. And I'll go into that. But I filmed with my phone him walking all the way down the street and sitting down at that curb. And I was hiding behind the van, and I just had my phone out. I have a Galaxy Note 21, which has a super badass camera. And matter of fact, I think I was recording with my iPhone that day, which has even a better camera. But I filmed the whole thing. He went down there and he sat, and he was just sitting on the curb,
Wow,
looking around. And while he's down there, they were filming the family over there with, it's very traumatic for the family, because someone just told them your dad was shot twice right here. This is where it happened. And, so when he walked down there, I filmed, and it's like 7 minutes, I think, is how long I filmed. But eventually Donna, the one that you saw on the show, she walks down there. And as she comes around the tree line and starts going down, I see his head drop like this, and he does like this. And that's when he started his act up again. But he didn't know I was filming, and he's just sitting down there looking around. He's not crying like he told everyone he did later. And I have it on film, and I'm going to release it eventually. But I filmed the whole thing. But when he was talking about that at dinner, I just thought, this guy is full of shit. He's lying to them about what he did. And, they just want answers. And he really, of course, my opinion, he really played on their emotions and
for sure. He milked the shit out of that thing.
Their want for help. And
yep.
And what people don't realize is that there was so much more to that. The film, there's only like 5 minutes or something, But I thought someone sent me some messages this morning where this guy's on his Twitter saying, Tiger King 2 psychic question, does he really know where Don Lewis is? Answer, yes. I'm like, man, this guy. But the way that came about in August, when we did the tip line, we started getting calls in. And on the tip line, there's so many calls. Some of them are really crazy. Some are good, like the notary that called in. That was a great tip. And there's others, but there were psychics that called in too. But my job is not to withhold information from the family. I mean, if someone calls in, they're like, all you got to do is watch Tiger King. It was Carol Baskin. Like, I'm not going to relay that to the family.
The important ones you're going to relay. Yeah.
Yeah. But, if people call in, they say, hey, my name is, Gloria, whoever, and I'm a psychic and I have this site and blah, blah, blah. I have to give the information to the family. Right. And I would, when I would search first for psychics to see if there was anything about them online or whatever. But from time to time, I would say, hey, I know there's some people out there that have some amazing abilities, but I just got to let you know, like this person called, and it was something that we had pondered for a while, that maybe we should call in a psychic just to see what would happen.
Right.
I didn't think much of it, but at some point it was, when he came in, that's the last time I was there actually. And it was this year when that happened. But at some point, I was talking with them, and I think it was Donna said, do you think that, we should look into psychics or whatever? And I said, at this point, I don't think it would hurt if I found one that's
legit, almost
legit, or, I'm like, I just don't know. But, I said, I don't think it would hurt. We could just see what happened. Right. So she started researching them and she came across him somehow, some way. And one of the interesting things is, after she contacted him, I think the way it went down, she emailed him. And the response was, I'm limited on time. I don't know if I can, talk with you or not, but I'll look at my schedule and see if I can make an opening or whatever. So it was like this, oh, he's so busy.
Yeah.
That's what the thought. But eventually he agreed to talk and they had a conversation. And then, in the conversation, I didn't hear it, but this is what I was told later. He didn't know anything about their dad's case. He didn't know any details of it, but he had worked with Travis, the guy that accidentally killed himself in Tiger King 1, Joe's husband. Travis.
Yep. The younger guy. He shot himself in the office. Yeah.
Right. So Troy Griffin, this psychic, had worked with Travis's dad and stepmom, or his mom and stepdad, but he did a reading for them regarding Travis. Huh. So he's connected to the Tiger King thing, sort of, not really, but he did talk to one of his parents and did a reading. It is, and it's online. You can find it online. But he did tell one of the family members that he didn't know anything about their dad's case or Tiger King or any of that stuff.
So he's lying, because also even if you know anything about Travis, therefore you know something about Tiger King, you have to know something about Don Lewis.
Well, I'm glad you said that, because I get a call saying, hey, he's going to be out here in 3 days or whatever. And I'm in Oklahoma. I was like, all right, I'll leave tomorrow. I'll be out there because I want to see what this guy says. If he's got information, I want to know, because
you're in it.
Yeah, I'm in the middle of all of it. So I go out there, and the night before I meet with him, one of the people that does research for me, I'm like, hey, this guy's coming out. He's told someone in the family that he doesn't know anything about the case. I said, I just want to check him out before he gets here. And probably 30 minutes later, I get an email with a video, and it's this guy doing a 1-hour video with someone else. And they're talking about Tiger King and Carol Baskin and the Don Lewis case for an hour. And it wasn't something where he's like, let me look at my notes and see, like he was just talking about the show and all of this stuff. So he obviously knew something about it.
God, this guy.
And I saw that and I was like, oh shit. I said, he said he didn't know anything about it. And so I reached out to one of the daughters and I said, hey, I'm going to send you this video. I said, I find it hard to believe that he says he doesn't know anything about it when here's a video from a couple months ago where he talks for an hour about it or whatever.
Right.
And she said, well, he's already flying out. He's already, everything's already put together, scheduled and everything. So we'll just see how it goes. I was like, okay. So there was some doubt, not really by them, but I mean, she gave him the benefit of the doubt.
Right. You could kind of tell.
Yeah, she did. And these people, like I said, they are really nice people and they really need answers, but they met with him. They listened to him. I don't know how many times these girls cried because of the things that he was telling them. And, I'm just like, oh man, this is hard. Like It was hard to watch. But yeah, after it was all said and done, I'm like, I mean, he charged for it too.
I was going to say, did they pay him?
They did.
Oh my
yes,
God.
They did. And I was just like, but I can't, it's not my job to say, hey, you can't do this. I just need to be there to see, like, if I can help with things that come out or whatever. But, and for the record, the blonde Don in there, even if I would have said, hey, you can't do this, that wouldn't have worked because she will do whatever it is. Like if she has her mindset to do something, she's going to do it. She's really nice and a sweet person, but if she says she's going to do something, you can't change her mind or make her stop. Like She's hard-headed and she will, and I hope she doesn't get mad for me saying this, but her sisters know this as well. The whole family knows that that's the one person in the family that you don't mess with or try to boss around because they call her the dragon lady and you don't want to push her to the point where the dragon lady comes out. But even if I would have said, don't do it, blah, blah, it wouldn't have done any good because it was already in motion and she wanted to know if this guy had any information. And it just, to me, it just was, it was very hard to watch and see them go through that thing. Because we don't know, like we still don't know like the cause of death for their dad. And for someone to,
if there is,
well,
I don't know. That's my last question to you. We'll get to that in a second, but I have.
Well, Kenny Farr and Carol knew that Don was never coming back. I do know that. They knew he would never come back home. So I have to assume they knew he was dead.
Damn. So and that's something that easily like a psychic could do some research and go and say that. And honestly, like I think psychics for the most part are all BS anyways, just because it's kind of easy to guess and pull at strings and stuff like that to get close enough to something, especially when they're so vulnerable. I know John, I don't know if you remember this guy, John Edwards from back in the day.
I do. Yeah, I do.
He was not legit, but he seemed very legit. And he was kind of like uncovered to kind of be doing these, it's simple. And now today it's easy to search for people and find things about them that you can pull from. So, this guy just preyed on them, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah. But he came across in the show just exactly how he was in real life too. Right.
The chicken thing for me was like, this guy's, because they only showed like 5 minutes of the whole thing, which I knew there was obviously more, but I'm like, this guy's full of shit. You're like, I don't know.
We were mic'd up the whole day. Now, if there would have been talk of chickens before, I know dang well that those
would have used it.
filmmakers would have brought that up where Ryan talking about chickens, or like they would have played, they're like, do you remember me talking about chickens? There would have been
A montage of you guys talking about
right,
chickens. Yeah.
right. But it never, we talked about alligators in a swamp. I remember talking about, because we drove by an area where it was swampy and we talked about alligators, but I would just have racked my brain. I'm like, because I live out in the country and we used to have chickens here. I always think we still have them, but we don't, but we just got rid of them maybe 4 or 5 months ago. But if someone ever talks about, horses, donkeys, goats, chickens, like my ears perk up because I've had them.
Right.
And if someone started talking about chickens, I'd have been like,
you would have had something to say.
Well, not that day, because I really was trying to be quiet, but I would have remembered
Right. True.
talking about chickens because
Yep.
we've had so many of them. But yeah, when I saw that in the show, I was just like, I looked at my wife, I was like, we didn't talk about chickens that day. I'm like, what? No. But when he came up, there was an outhouse out there because there was a house being built. And he was walking up and I almost thought he was mad or something. Like he had this weird look, and down on the ground in front of the outhouse, there was this yellow styrofoam thing. And he came up and he kicked at it and he missed it. And then he kicked it again and it flipped over. And I saw him stop and he's just looking at it. And then he walked on down the street. I didn't even go and look at it. But I did see the camera guy come up there later and
Get a
film
shot
it.
of it. Yeah.
And now I know why. But so he kicked it over and looked at it and saw it probably said chicken tenders or something.
Yep.
I don't know. And then he went down to the curb. And of course, in the show, you hear Donna saying, was there a chicken up there? Like she thought an actual chicken up by the outhouse, not a chicken wrapper. I mean, It was so bizarre.
It was very bizarre. And it was, and like you said, the filmmakers did a good job of kind of like playing it to really what it was. Cause it was, first of all, what the hell does the chicken have? It has nothing to do with anything. Just because you talk, even if you did talk about chickens and you saw that, there's okay. And
that's a great point. But, I mean, that is a great, now, if he would have like gotten food poisoning from eating a chicken and that was the cause of death, then that'd be
right. If it was connected to Don in some way,
yeah,
absolutely nothing to do with anything.
No, just yeah, it was really bizarre.
So
really
weird.
Bizarre.
Damn. Okay. Well, we've been almost 2 hours now. So
wow.
Yeah, dude.
It was fast with you, man.
I know, man. It's good though, because I feel like you're getting a lot of information that hasn't been talked about yet, and we're covering some things in the doc that I was super curious about. But I'll give one more question. I'll let you get out of here. And this is probably the biggest one you might get. I don't know. What do you think actually happened to Don Lewis?
I think that Friday afternoon on August 15th, when he went home to tell Carol he was going to divorce her, I think he, I think between 2 and 4 o'clock, he lost his life because Anne McQueen started calling him at 4 o'clock on Friday, August 15th. He left his office at 1:30 that day. And she never got a hold of him. He never called her back. So something happened between the time he got home and 4 o'clock that he could not answer his phone or make a call. And then that weekend, you have so many events that are just so weird with, Kenny Farr's ex-wife saying Kenny came home Sunday night driving one of Don's vans. He had Don's gun collection Sunday night. Some people think something happened Sunday night, but I think Sunday afternoon is when the body something happened to the body. There was, of course, the crazy theory about the septic tank. And I won't bring them out, but in this envelope right here are the original septic tank receipts. And the original stuff is in there. And that septic was installed August 6th is when they reset the septic, because Kenny Farr and Carol's dad installed the septic to begin with, but they built the hole too deep. So they had to hire a company to come out and lift it, backfill it, and reset the septic. And on August 14th, there's a receipt in there for the last thing that was done on that septic. And that's the day before Don Lewis was last seen by his secretary. Something else that makes me think it was something that weekend is the notary. The notary called into the tip line, said she never signed the will, the power of attorney. There were some affidavits that were submitted in the conservatorship case. And one of the affidavits was signed by the notary, and another one was notarized by the notary. But in my conversations with her, she denies signing any of that stuff too. She said Carol was the one that helped her get her notary stamp, because she said, I was just a housekeeper. She goes, but I didn't have a logbook. She goes, I didn't even know where the notary stamp was most of the time. And then if you look up the records, the notary stamp for that housekeeper was actually mailed to Carol's house, not to the housekeeper's house. So
the actual notary. Yeah.
Yeah. But the kicker is, when I was talking to the notary, and just to get the dates set, August 15th is when Don Lewis is last seen by Ann McQueen. August 19th, which is a Tuesday, is when Carol files the missing persons report. And in the missing persons report, she says she saw Don leaving home around 6 a.m. Monday morning. And that's where the famous early thing came from Tiger King. She goes, before Don left, he told me to tell Kenny to get the van ready or the truck ready early. So Monday morning around 6 a.m. is supposedly when she last saw him. But when I talked to the notary, and this is a question I ask everyone that I had talked to, I said, when did you first learn that Don Lewis went missing? And the notary says, and the notary was also the housekeeper, and she worked there full time for them, 40 hours a week at the house. She said, when I went into work Monday morning, Carol told me, hey, if the police come by, don't freak out or anything. Don is missing. Now, if Carol saw Don at 6 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning, why is she 2.5 to 3 hours later telling the notary Don's missing? Like, he shouldn't be missing. But what had happened, now that we know, Carol had Don's cell phone. Ann McQueen says she called his cell phone all weekend. She was paging him with their emergency pager number. The whole weekend, Ann's calling this phone, calling. So Carol knows when Don doesn't show up to work Monday morning that Ann McQueen is probably going to freak out, because her best friend is pretty much missing.
Yeah.
And she's probably going to call the cops because she can't get a hold of the guy. So what do you do if you're worried about the cops showing up? You plant these seeds with all these different people saying, hey, if the cops show up, don't freak out. Don's missing. I don't know if he's out and about with girls, or I added that little part in, but there was other people that were given information as well. But the notary has come forward, and that's the big important one, because she's the housekeeper. She was there, but the seed was planted with her on Monday morning. And another thing, when we talk about the investigation into this, the housekeeper was there 40 hours a week. If someone went missing, or you thought something happened to someone and you were investigating, the housekeeper is someone that you probably want to talk to, right?
Definitely.
Like, did you notice any blood anywhere or broken, The housekeeper was never questioned by law enforcement until just recently.
What?
I kid you not. That's why I say, if they would have done their job right after all this stuff happened, I think they would have pretty much solved it, because they could have pulled the phone records. They could have seen who was calling who
was in and out and all that stuff. Yeah.
Right. The Sunday night where Carol says she went to go get cat's milk at 11 o'clock at night. She gets back at 3 a.m. There were so many things that happened, but I mean, that was the first person I wanted to talk to. Like, when I started looking into this, I'm like, oh, they had a housekeeper That's their 40-hour full-time housekeeper. I'm like, oh man, I bet she has a ton of information.
Right.
I mean, and I asked her, did you see any blood? Like, do you see any broken windows? And, nothing. She's like, no, I didn't see any blood, nothing broken or, but she did say she learned that Monday morning that he was missing. And I'm like, how could he be missing if she just saw him 3 hours before?
Right.
And then you put that together with Kenny Farr's ex-wife, who says she knew Sunday night that Don was missing. Once you start piecing all these pieces together, it's kind of, to me, it's pretty clear something happened that weekend. And of course, I have other information. There's other people that have come forward, but we're not putting it out, of course. But I have no doubt in my mind that man was killed on Friday, August 15th, 1997.
On his property. You think like the whole thing of like her feeding him to the tigers, or what do you think?
Not the tigers, because the tigers are so picky that they're not going to eat the whole body. They might eat the stomach and the intestines, but when I started looking into this crazy septic tank thing, I called the company that installed it. The same people own it today that installed it, and they still had the records on it. And I said, what can you tell me about it? And she gave me the exact size of it. That was a 900-gallon septic tank, which is a good size septic tank. And she said, and it had a clean out on it. I said, is the clean out accessible? She's like, yeah, it's always accessible. I said, well, how big of a clean out? Because we have septics out here where I live. And like our clean out on one of ours is, just like that big. But I said, what was the clean out on that? Do you know? She's like, yeah, it's an 18-inch clean out. And I'm like thinking, Don Lewis weighed like 150 pounds. So I asked them, I said, do you think a 150-pound man would fit through like that type of clean out? And they're like, well, yeah, it's 18 inches. Like, yeah. And then they said, and then all you would have to do is go out and get 4, 5, 6 bags of concrete, dump it in there, pour water in there. You'd have a false bottom. And then even when you cleaned out the septic, you'd never get anything because you have a false bottom in the bottom of the septic. And they told me that there had been 2 bodies found in their septic systems that they had installed in the past when they were cleaning them out. So it's not uncommon for, I guess, people to dump bodies in septic systems. So one of the important things is Carol came out and said in her diaries and her YouTube videos that Joe's theory, because Joe Exotic always talked about the septic and Don was under. He's not under. I think he's in. But Carol said that's ludicrous because that septic was put in long before Don went missing. And, I thought, okay, well, maybe it was then. And if it was, then probably no big deal. Like, it's probably just Joe being stupid.
Right.
But then Sheriff Chronister came out when he was, I think, with Nancy Grace in an interview, and she asked him about the septic. And he said, oh, yeah, we pulled the permits and all the records. And that septic wasn't put in till years later. Said, Don had been missing for years before that septic was put in. Well, when he said that, I thought, hold on a second. Like, I know he didn't go and get the permits. I know damn well he didn't, because he didn't know enough about the case anyway. But when he said that, I thought, hold on, there's something's really wrong here. Long before, years later, I'm like, so we tracked down the person that owned it, that lived there on the property. And I went out, was meeting with her, met with her a couple of times. And then she had a guy out there by the name of David helping her. And she was like, maybe we should look through all my old records. Because what we're looking for is the original handwriting of Carol or Don, so we could give to a handwriting expert. And she's pulling these boxes down she's like, I don't know why I saved all this stuff, but I just figured one day. And as we're going through all this stuff, she's like, oh, here's the receipt for my trailer when I bought it. And she's like, here's my permit to get the septic installed. And these were like original documents. And she's like, oh my, she's like, I got everything here. And I was like, let me see that. And I'm looking, it's for the dirt, it's the order for the septic install, like all of it.
Wow.
And when I'm looking at the dates, I'm like, June of 1997, the permit was applied for the septic. He went missing in August of 97. On August 5th is when the order was written up by the company that installed it. On August 6th, there's the load for the backfill, which the story that I was told that they had to bring dirt in, because other people had told me that, yeah, they dug the hole too deep and then they had to backfill it with something. And, it was a big mess and whatever. But as I'm looking through these documents, I'm like, there's August 6th and it clearly says reset and backfill. I was like, so they had to reset the septic. They pulled it up, put the dirt in, and it was all right there. And then the last thing was the mound dirt. It was dated August 14th, 1997, which is the day before Ann McQueen last sees Don Lewis.
What?
Yeah. I mean, it's all right. It's all right here. I can send them. I'll scan them and send them to you if you want, but it's all right here.
Wow.
So then I'm like, why was Carol lying about the dates of the septic? I'm like, there's no reason to lie about that unless you have a reason to lie about it.
Right.
And then I don't know if you know about after the show come out, she put an offer out there that if anyone wants to come out and dig up the septic, they can, as long as they replace it with a new one.
Mm-hmm.
And I took her up on her offer. And I called, left a voicemail. I emailed her, didn't get anything back. And then like a week or two later, she had put a video out and said, no YouTubers are allowed. So then I finagled a way to do it so it wasn't a YouTuber. And then I think a couple of weeks after that, there was a video that came out, and I think it was Howard actually talking, saying that if someone wants to put $100,000 up, they can put it up and we'll dig up the septic. And if he's not in there, we keep the $100,000. If he's there, you can have your money back. I'm like, what? Did they really just bet $100,000? I'm like, I mean, all these things are real to me. I'm like, something is really wrong here. And I know, Corey, if it was you and you had a septic and people, and you had like 40 some $million in your bank account, and someone was accusing you of having a body in your septic, I'm pretty sure you would just be like, all right, I'm going to pay somebody 10 grand to get out here and let's squash this thing.
Yes, end it
right
now. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yep.
I would.
Yep.
I'd be like, yeah, I'll do it myself if I have to.
Right.
But yeah, $100,000 bet. And I was just like, all right, we'll just raise $100,000 reward instead, and we'll get someone to come forward. But
That's
yeah,
crazy.
it's crazy. It really is. And I wish I was making it all up, but I'm not. It's true. This stuff really happened.
Wow, that's the crazy thing about this whole situation. Like I said, I've been saying Tiger King, you can't make this shit up.
I know. There's
It
so
just layers of layers and layers and layers. I'm sure they're gonna do a Tiger King 3, and especially with all the new evidence and stuff like that.
Oh.
So
yeah. And now I meant to say, when you're talking about Joe and these witnesses coming forward and recanting, I don't know if that's going to be very helpful for Joe. It makes for great media attention. Right. I mean, if you want media attention, that's the way to do it. But I really don't think that it's gonna help, because if they were credible from the beginning, sure. Right. But it almost seems as if it's just a ploy to get media attention. And if you ever talked to James Garrettson, the guy on the jet ski, the jet ski guy? No. All right. I had him on my channel a couple of times. You need to interview him. Okay. After you interview John Phillips, because James Garrettson is one of the witnesses that came forward and signed one of those affidavits. Yep. But I did talk to James a couple of weeks ago. Now, I'm not going to say anything about what he told me, but after you interview John Phillips, interview James Garrettson. Okay. I'll reach out to him. I'll try to find him. I will. I'll give you his phone number. I have his phone number. That's great. I'll give it. And because he was in the middle of all this stuff. I know. Yeah. Because after I saw the show, and saw the decapitated head plan to kill Joe. I was like, I called James the next day. I said, hey man, I don't mean to bother you. I know that you hate this Tiger King stuff, but I was like, I just got to know, was there a plan to kill Joe? He said, fuck no. He said, that's all bullshit. He said, I was there when all of this stuff was going down. He said, I was there every day. He said, that shit never happened. I'm like, really? He said, never happened. I was like, wow. I'm like, well, what? I said, never mind. I don't even want to know. But you need to, you talk to him.
All right. Yeah. I'll hit him up. He was an interesting character.
He's got so much information about Joe's case. I mean, he was working with the government,
right?
You know, I mean, he's got a ton of information, but he was there. Like he was right there. And he said that Joe had opened up that pizza restaurant out there at the place.
Oh my God.
And they're using the meats from the Walmart truck. He said the pizza was really good though.
That's disgusting. I know. I felt so bad for the people eating it and the tigers.
Can you imagine?
Oh my God. That's disgusting.
Crazy,
yeah, man. That's him. Send me his stuff.
I will,
because he's an interesting character. And that's so at the end of the day, you think that Don Lewis is buried inside of the septic tank, and you think Kenny and CB had something to do with it.
My opinion is that Carol, her dad, and Kenny were part of it. Kenny and Carol benefited a lot from the disappearance of Don Lewis. I mean, Kenny ended up getting, I think, almost $1 million worth of property in the year following Don Lewis. And that's another thing they didn't put in the show, is within a year after Don Lewis went missing, Carol had transferred properties to Kenny or Kenny's dad. And I think the last we figured it up, it was close to $1 million worth of properties.
Wow.
And I had talked to Kenny's ex-wife and say, hey, did Kenny ever manage properties, rentals or whatever? And she laughed. She's like, no. She's like, he's not that kind of person. She said, what he would do is get those properties, take a mortgage out on them, and then get a check for the equity and never make a payment on the mortgage, and the house would go into foreclosure. And I was like, wow. I said, that sounds like a payment. She's like, it was a payment, that and his new truck. She said he got a new truck too shortly after Don went missing. I've not been able to find the records for the truck though, so I don't know whose name it was in. But, after Don went missing, Carol, her dad, and Kenny broke into Don's office and stole all the documents. And they ended up moving the trailer, the whole office, out to Easy Street. And everybody that I talked to that knew Don and worked for Don said that if they would have done something like that, he would have blown his top. That
right.
You don't mess with his work stuff, his office or whatever. So that right there told me that, within a week of Don being gone, they knew he was never coming back. And that's always been my question, is if they knew he wasn't coming back, how did they know? How did they know he wasn't going to be coming back?
Right.
Yeah,
I remember them talking about that in the first season.
Yeah, it's crazy. Hopefully they do have a season 3, and hopefully they put a lot of this stuff that's been uncovered in there. Hopefully a lot of the things that the group of people that I work with have uncovered, hopefully all of that stuff can be corroborated, and then they can lay it all out, because it really is, it's an incredible story with all of these people that have done all this work for free. That's the best thing, is we've all done it for free because we think this family needs help.
Right. Well, that's amazing, man. And hey, listen, also thank you again for coming on, but where can people find you, find your, the Facebook group and all that stuff? And I'll also post links to everything in the description.
I'm not sure I want people to find me, but no, I'm kidding. I got a YouTube channel called Ripperjack Media. Everything's under Ripperjack Media. If you Google, like Ripperjack Media, or you just search for me on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, or Facebook. I'm on all those social media sites under Ripper Jack Media.
Awesome, man. Well, Ripper, thanks again for coming on. I really appreciate it. And that's another episode of the E4 Explicit Podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you, Corey. I appreciate it, man. You're
Absolutely.
awesome.
And right now they're doing a buy one, get one free plus free shipping, the 30-day money back guarantee, and a lifetime warranty. On top of that, you, my friends, will get 10% off of any product, of any purchase on their website by using Explicit 10. Use the code Explicit 10 and you'll get 10% off your entire purchase from bravoconcealment.com.